Assalamu alaikum everyone and welcome to your next lecture on service marketing. Today's topic of discussion is service consumer behavior, and I'm sure that you people are already going through an entire course on consumer behavior, but what's different here in this course is we're not going to discuss all those original theories and philosophies that we usually discuss in consumer behavior. We already had consumer behavior two times, once in semester 3 in your fundamental of marketing course, second time in marketing management courses. But here in service marketing course, we are going to discuss some additional concepts which are not conventionally discussed in generic consumer behavior, consumer cultures and society courses. As I mentioned you people explicitly in my first class that services marketing course is all about everything apart from what you have already studied. Now, everything that you came across in marketing so far, everything that you know about marketing, everything you know about the 4 Ps, each and every tool, each and every tactic that we learn in marketing is universally applied in almost all kinds of products and services. Sometimes they are standardized, sometimes they are adapted. But in this course, we are not discussing all those tools and techniques because you already know that. What we are discussing here is some additional concerns, some additional filters, some additional considerations, some additional implications that every service marketer has to understand before they start developing their consumer marketing strategy. So here is the next part of our service marketing module, and that is to discuss some additional concerns, some additional theories and philosophies, some additional aspects of service consumer behaviors. Now there are going to be some commonalities between the concept that we are going to discuss here and what we have already discussed, but the implications, the strategic nature of these concepts are going to be totally different, because as we discussed earlier that all of these theories and philosophies, they have to be changed when it comes to marketing the services. So when it comes to goods, all the marketing principles, all the marketing mixes, they can sometimes be standardized or adapted, like I mentioned. But in service marketing, there are certain additional concerns, some additional concepts that we need to know. So let's get this thing started and see what we have to learn. So it starts from that original basic model of consumer decision making process, basically. So you may have come across this model before that. You may have studied in your fundamentals of management courses. You may have studied in fundamentals of marketing courses. So this is a broader standardized consumer decision making process, a decision making model. So it all starts with your basic stimulus when some commercial cue that you receive from the company. It can be an external cue, it can be an internal cue, and then you realize some problem, and then you look for information to satisfy your need, your issues, and then you look for different alternatives. You come across different alternatives, and then you select something, and then you go for consumption and post-purchase stage. What you need to remember here is that consumer behavior is basically the psychology of marketing. Just like a human psychology, everything we do, everything we think, can be discussed in the matter of psychology. Similarly, everything from the consumer perspective, either business consumers or a household consumer or personal consumption, we talk about consumer decision making theories and philosophies. They can be universally adapted, implemented across all different kinds of consumption. So what you need to remember here is that all of these stages, they have different sort of interpretation for different kind of products. Not all of these stages are totally similar in terms of their design, in terms of their implementation. So in terms of services, they can be totally different. So when we meet in the class, we are going to discuss a simple example, a simple case through which you can correlate this consumer decision making process in terms of services. For now, you are just it's a very simple process, and you can see that every consumption of consumer, either business or personal consumption, it can be divided into 3 stages. You have a pre-purchase stage, and then you have a purchase stage, which is not actually mentioned here because it is added up in consumption stage, and then you have a post-purchase stage. So basically, consumer behavior theories and philosophies, they are discussed in terms of pre-purchase, consumption, and a post-purchase behavior. So every consumer have 3 types of behavior. They have a pre-purchase behavior when they look for different kind of products, they look for different kind of services, they try to understand, they try to evaluate different kind of options they have, and then they go to the market or online to buy something. That is basically your consumption stage, and then you consume it. you use it, and then you dispose it, or store it, or any other kind of post-purchase behavior that we can discuss. So every concept that you actually see in consumer behavior, you talk about culture, you talk about personalities, you talk about lifestyle, they affect on your pre-purchase, your purchase, and your post-purchase stages. So for now, we can just let this thing be, and just trying to give you a hands up on how consumer decision process model actually works. But now we are going to discuss how these things are going to be discussed in terms of services. So that is just a detailed explanation of what we have just discussed. So different kind of cues actually create different kind of stimulus. We have internal stimulus, which are basically your individual needs. You can actually compare these needs with the Maslow hierarchy of needs or any other kind of need model that you use. And then you have some outside needs, some commercial cues that you actually receive when you talk about external stimulus, like companies promotional efforts when they give you certain commercial, like a university placing advertisements for admission in the university, a hotel is advertising, an airline is advertising, or sometime your peers, your family members, or any other group, any other membership group to which you are part of, or you have a physical cue like internal needs. So everything actually triggers some sort of a stimulus. The stimulus is basically a thought, an action, a motivation that motivates you, that pushes you to do something. So a motivated person is ready to act. That's what you need to remember. So when you are ready to act, you look for information, you look to satisfy your needs and wants. Then you came across different kind of products and services, and then you use those products and services to satisfy yourself. And then there is a post-purchase behavior. So we are going to discuss these stages one by one in order to see how these stages can be adapted in terms of services. So I've just discussed this concept of need. Then one thing you need to remember is when you talk about information search, whenever you people look for information, your information is actually stored at three levels. Once you get aware about something, you talk about the set of alternatives for which a consumer is aware. Then at a given point of time, you evoke that information, and then if that information is is relevant to you, it's more oriented towards your needs and wants, and it actually making sense to you guys, and you consider purchasing those products, or you consider not purchasing those products based on those information that you have already received. So actually the information search is a composition of three different steps: the awareness, the evoke, and then the consideration set. And when you look for information, you look at two levels. You either go for internal search, you go for external search. That is the same old process. So we are going to skip this stage again. And if you have any questions, you can later ask me in the class. But that is a very old process that we have discussed so many times before. So I'm not going to waste my time again. Here is what you need to understand here is when you look for different kind of information, either internally or externally, the selection of a product or a service and the process that you use in order to select those products and services can be different for goods and services. For example, in front of you is an example where somebody is trying to decide either which university is going to be suitable for them. And what they have done is they have actually used a model, and they have used a different kind of attributes, and they are actually ranking different kind of universities based on that attribute. So basically the total score is actually going to decide which university is more suitable. So this is what you need to remember here is when it comes to goods, there may not be that much attributes for you, but when it comes to services, consumer maybe having a lot of attributes to discuss, having a lot of attributes to evaluate. So this is actually the strategy that you need to remember. As a marketer, you need to make sure that your service is basically composed of how many variables, what group of variables are actually going to be instrumental in the decision making process. So like if you purchase a car, it may not be that much amount of features that you may be evaluating. I mean, it's basically a price, or its speed, or its capacity, or something. But when it comes to services, there may be a lot more attributes. You talk about airline services, you talk about hospitality services. The variables are so much important, and they have a lot more things. You may need a lot of information in order to make the right decision. So every set of organization, every manager, every service marketer, every entrepreneur, they need to understand this fact that their services are basically evaluated on so many different variables. So once you are aware of how many variables are actually important, are actually instrumental, what you can do is you can actually promote those variables. You can make sure that the consumer score your organization better on all these attributes. So that actually is the important thing that you need to understand here. And then let's talk about the consumption stage. When you talk about, what you need to do here is you need to compare these stages with the goods, with the manufactured products, because if you are going to compare services with goods, it's going to make a complete sense. So the consumption process is basically composed of three stages: the buying the product, you buy the product, you use the product, or you dispose the product. But you need to understand here is, when it comes to buying the product, there are store versus non-store choices. So both of these stores and non-store choices, they may require different kind of consumer behavior, methodologies. They may require different kind of strategies in order to target customers. So when we'll meet in the class, we're going to discuss how store versus non-store choices can actually make a difference in services marketing. So you better be ready to answer me this question. We'll meet in the class. So once talk about using the product, you need to understand that disposal is irrelevant in services. So using the product in terms of services is another different dimension. And you talk about disposing the product. So in services, there are no disposal, but yes, there are certain strategies a marketer can use in order to take advantage of this third stage. And how are we going to take advantage of it? What kind of disposing strategies, what kind of disposals are available to marketers in terms of services? We are going to discuss them in the class. So another important thing that you need to remember, that when it comes to services, you may face a lot of more cognitive dissonance in terms of product consumption and satisfaction. Now goods also, they come up with cognitive dissonance, but they are there's not that much amount of cognitive dissonance that is required. So now my question here with you guys is, I'm going to ask you this question in the class, that why is the concept of cognitive dissonance is more important in services as compared to good? Why do we have to understand that cognitive dissonance can happen? It can happen in goods, it can happen in services, but why is why is that goods, they have low cognitive dissonance in terms of post-purchase evaluation, but the services, they have a lot of cognitive dissonance? So what actually is cognitive dissonance? It's a doubt in consumer's mind regarding the correctness of the purchase decision. So how you can reduce this doubt? You can come up with these strategies in order to reduce the cognitive dissonance. Now these strategies, they can be adapted for so many businesses. An airline industry, they may be using these strategies in different manner. A hospital may be using it in a different manner. A restaurant may be using it in a different manner. A university may use it in a different manner. So cognitive dissonance strategy can be a little bit different in terms of their implementation. Another important thing you need to understand regarding the pre-purchase stage, that is, the consumer tend to perceive a higher level of risk during the pre-purchase decision. Now, why is that? Why consumer tend to have a high level of risk during the pre-purchase decision? So I have already gave you this answer before in chapter 1, in chapter 3. All you have to do is to connect different dots, and you need to explain me this question again: why consumer tend to perceive a high level of risk during the pre-purchase decision. So this is not just a recording for me. It is for you to prepare. You need to understand that I'm not here just to explain the different concept. I want you people to think. If I'm just sitting here explaining you everything, it does not make any sense. It does not make any difference for me, because you people will never be able to use your mind to connect different strategies, to connect different concepts, and to come up with strategies. It's never going to polish your mind. It's never going to improve you people as a marketer. So if you just focus on the question that I'm just saying, it's going to be much more helpful for you people in the future. So this is what actually I'm interested in. So actually what you talk about perceived risk is actually the combination of two things: the consequences and the uncertainty, the degree of importance, how much that situation in which that cognitive dissonance can happen, in which that risk can happen, is important to you, and what is the possibility that this thing is going to happen. So basically it's just psychological terms. You do not need to worry yourself with consequences and uncertainty. You just need to focus on the question that I just asked you. And what kind of risks are we talking about? What kind of risks can be associated with services and the goods? They can be financial, performance, physical risk, social risk, psychological risk. My question again with you guys here is that what can a marketer do in order to reduce these risks within your purchases? Every purchase, either good or service, they come up with some sort of a risk. So what can a marketer do what can a marketer does to reduce these risks associated with the consumption? Now, I know that it may look like a lot of information in front of you, but when we'll meet in the class, you will appreciate the fact that these strategies are really important. These strategies, they come, with a lot of important decisions for the business, and when you are able to understand them, you will be in a better position to comprehend and implement all these things from the future perspective. Like you will be really in a place where you can understand how actually the philosophies and the theories of consumer behavior, they actually contribute towards the marketing plans, the marketing strategy. So the next thing you need to remember here is that why is there a perception of the increased risk? Why do we have a perception that there is a possibility that the purchasing risk uh, associated with the services may be more as compared to the goods? Now, I already gave you these answers. It's all about, you people correlating these concepts with your previous learning. And then you have in front of you some of the answers that I'm just asking you people, that why is the perception of increased risk is a more relevant factor in services as compared to good, is because of the risk and standardization, is because of heterogeneity, is because of inseparability, and because of the risk and information. So this is again another question. So I know you must be thinking on your own, why am I asking you all these questions and all that stuff? But trust me, it's not just going to prepare you people from the perspective of actually doing something in the market, doing something for yourself, for your business, but also from examination point of view. It's not just a one side learning, it's a dual learning. So you are not just going to be prepared for your future, but also for your examination. So if you're just paying attention, just listen to me for a second and try to get on board with me, you will really be at some place where you can achieve both of the objectives. So if you talk about risk and information, you need to understand that every product, it comes with different kind of attributes in terms of information. Some information, it provides attributes that can be determined prior to the purchase. Some attributes are related to the product, attributes that can be evaluated only during and after the production process, and some attributes that cannot be evaluated confidently even immediately after the receipt of the good or the service. So basically, information is another important issue that actually increases the risk. So how the information can also be a risk factor in terms of information. So again, that is another question that we're going to discuss. So the next class with you people is going to be a lot of questions and answers, a lot of discussion for me. That actually I'm interested in. I'm just not interested in explaining everything in front of you. You can read them in the book. My task here is to train you people, right? I just want you people to get a total grasp on these concepts and be independent in your own strategic thinking, be confident about what you know, be able to implement these things, be able to guide, consult, provide consultation to the people. That actually is the objective of this course. Another thing that you need to understand about the pre-purchase stage. So you must be, realizing by now that the author is actually discussing all these stages and the consideration that you need to remember. So he's not talking about what do you do in pre-purchase, what is the culture, what is lifestyle, personality. These are all very relevant factors, and they contribute a lot towards pre-purchase, purchase, and post-purchase stage. But you are already studying that. You are going through consumer behavior course. I'm sure you are going to be well trained on all those principles as well. But they are not going to talk about the service perspective, because that's what we are here for. So that is the fact that what he's trying to do is to give you a deeper prospect on on different stages and how these stages are different from one another in terms of service marketing. So uh, another important factor you need to remember is service consumers are more brand loyal, and we all know what brand loyalty actually does for the consumer. It reduces the perceived risk associated with the purchase. And then you need to remember that in services, very limited number of choices are available. Services do not come up with a lot of options for you people. You can have a lot of option in goods, but not in services. And then there is more of a switching cost that is a relevant factor in services as compared to the goods. When it comes to goods, most of the time the switching cost is not that much high, but when it comes to services, the switching cost can be a lot more as compared to goods. So what kind of costs are we talking about? We're talking about the search cost, transaction cost, learning cost, loyal consumer discounts, consumer as a habit, emotional cost, cognitive cost. So all of these costs, they actually contribute a lot towards the consumer lack of switching towards different brands. And that is one reason that the consumers are more brand loyal towards the services. So how can marketer, they can use these strategies, these factors in order to make their customer more brand loyal? That is going to be our next question. So another important factor regarding the still the pre-purchase stage is one of the most important stages. Another issue that you need to address here is that the mass marketing is going to be less effective. Why? Word of mouth reference routes. Why? Target opinion leaders. Why? That is actually a different kind of question that you need to discuss. How and why do we all see that mass marketing, mass advertising is used by so many service organizations. We see banks, they all advertise on television. We see airlines, they all advertise on different mass media tools. They advertise on magazines, newspapers. All of them are actually the tools of mass media. But still, what author is trying to say is that the mass advertising is not a very useful strategy. It may not be that much effective as much as compared to the goods. That is going to be our next question. Why the mass marketing is not that much suitable? But what he has done is he has provided you one reason because of which the mass marketing may not be that much effective, and that is non-personal sources may not be available. So consumer may not be exposed to different kinds of non-personal information that we use to make decisions about the products and services. Sometimes you have professional restrictions. Sometimes small firms, they do not lack, they do not have resources. They lack the resources because and the knowledge to advertise effectively. So they are in front of you some of the reasons, but there are still so many different strategies that we need to discuss. Another important issue is that there may be few alternatives available. Each service provider tends to offer only one brand. Most of the service providers, they do not provide a lot of options to you people. A small number of outlets providing the same service, and sometimes there's a lack of pre-purchase information. Before I move forward, something it came to my mind is that this course actually requires a lot of thinking. It's not just a simple concept like reading out a definition and realizing, or reading a story about something. It requires you people to think intuitively. It requires you people to think proactively, and then come up with solution. And that is going to be a little bit challenging, because if you people are not paying attention, if you people are not going through the book, it may be difficult for you people to understand and comprehend the actual essence of this course, and you may not be able to produce something in your exam, and may not be able to work effectively in the market as well, because we all know that eventually you people have to become a part of service industry, because it's obviously the 70-75% of the job market and the consumption all over the world. And then you have another important issue in the pre-purchase stage, that is the self-service is a viable alternative. Many service providers must consider the customer's own self-provision as a viable competitor in the marketplace. What does this statement mean? Funny, right? There are so many things that I just left to your imagination. So you must be thinking, but remember, I'm not doing, my job for you or your job for you. The thing is that if you are not able to understand, if you are not giving it a little bit of thought or something, it's just not worth it. It's just not worth our time. I'm not going to meet you for 1.5 hours and just ask you, is there any questions? You say, no, we have no question, and then it's the end of the class. So I want you people to be engaged with this course. So that is how I think it should be. All right, so we are moving toward the consumption stage, and that is a very simple matter to discuss. Consumer consumption sequence, they differ in terms of goods and services. You need to remember the goods have production, acquisition, use, and disposal. But when it comes to services, we have production, acquisition, and use only. But one question again is, what is trying to say? The stages are entangled. Stages are entangled. But yeah, we know all that disposal is irrelevant. But yes, disposal is not always irrelevant. There are, certain cases, certain examples. But by the way, why is he trying to, discuss the concept of disposal? Do you think that disposal is actually a matter, is actually an issue in marketing? How is that? Why is that? And what can we do in order to, deal with this concept of disposal? Why is this factor is so relevant? Why is he talking about that? Because we, actually have never actually thought about disposal. So, actively, we actually just consider it as a, reactive thing. We just consider it as a passive thing. We don't actually spend a lot of time thinking about disposal, but from marketing point of view, disposal is relevant. So evaluation occurred during and after consumption. That I hope you understand, because we have already discussed the concept of inseparability, perishability, intangibility. So we are going to discuss this when we meet in the class. And again, he is just, elaborating everything in place. And then you have a post-purchase consideration, and then you need to remember one thing, that there are different kind of theories that we use, but you do not have to worry yourself with these theories. You may have come across several theories in your organizational behavior course. You may be, familiar with some theories in your consumer behavior course. So post-purchase models actually are created in order to make marketers understand how consumer perceive satisfaction, how consumer actually think about the process of post-purchase, and what kind of strategies we can use, and what can you do in order to make sure that the post-purchase behavior is quite positive, the post-purchase satisfaction is quite positive or something. And the thing is that these theories, they have different philosophies, they have different models, and it's entirely up to you to understand that what kind of theory is more relevant to your service or your product. Like every theory can have something to offer, and but it doesn't mean that every theory can be implemented on all kind of businesses. You just have to match what kind of theory is more relevant to you. So it says that we're talking about post purchase, right? We have already purchased the product, we have consumed the product, now we are talking about post purchase. The expectancy disconfirmation theory. So you do not have to remember everything ratani marna, and you don't have to reproduce everything. Just read them out and try to understand what it's trying to say. It proposes that consumer evaluate services by comparing expectations with perception. So basically what you were expecting and what you were perceiving about that product, if the perceptions are greater than expectations, and it may be called a dissatisfaction. If perceptions are lower than expectation, may be called satisfaction. If perceptions are equal to expectation, it may be called satisfaction. So that is actually how it is perceived. Let's say consumer evaluate services by the amount of control they have over the perceived situation. So you need to understand that more control you are going to provide to the consumer, the more satisfaction they are going to receive. If I give you a control to design your own academics, if I give you control to design your own timing of the classes, you will be feeling control and you may be more satisfied. Obviously we are not going to do that, because actually discourages the entire essence of education. But yeah, there may be so many services in which you can provide control to the consumer. Like you talk about restaurant services, you talk about salons, you talk about different you talk about airlines. So they can provide different kind of controls, so you can design your own route, you can design your own package of Telenor or Zong, and that actually is a good example of providing control to the consumer. The more, and why is that thing so relevant in the services? Because we do not have a lot of information in services. You cannot actually be satisfied until you consume the service, and then you can understand whether you were satisfied or not. But in terms of goods, we already know that goods are objectively evaluated. We have objective gratification of something, we have objective data, we have objective quantification. So our decisions, our information about the service, about the goods, they do not lack in perspective. But in services we do not have that much amount of information. So the more control you provide to the consumer, the more satisfactory they're going to be. And then sometimes you need to understand that ComStats University, they use this third theory, which is called the script perspective. We know that some organizations, some services have to be governed by different rules, and these rules are basically because of the social and cultural variables which exist to facilitate interaction. Why do we have different kind of rules and regulation in ComStats as compared to the rest of the world? Because they have different kind of social and cultural structure. The culture they have, the age differences, the demographics, their economic condition, everything contributes towards the rules and regulations. And that's why in Pakistan we have different kind of rules followed by organization and different services organization, but these rules are not exactly standardized all over the world. I'm going to give you certain example in order to make you people understand the script perspective when we meet in the class. So that actually I just said, because expectation is equal to perception greater than expectation, and that actually is what it's trying to say. So I just said that what is actually a perceived control perspective. The basic premise is that during the service experience, the higher of the level of the control of the situation perceived by the consumer, the higher the satisfaction with the service will be. And the script perspective says all the words state the people are the player. The satisfaction is a function of script congruence. Script congruence occurs when the actual scripts performed by the consumers and the staff are consistent with expected script. So you do not have to, get carried away by this actual definition. It looks like a little bit, exhausting, because the words that actually used in psychology, the actual philosophy may be simple, but the word they actually use can be a little bit tricky. So what he's trying to say is that you're actually surrounded by script, different kind of rules and regulations, and the satisfaction is a function of the script. The script congruency agar nahi hogi, if the scripts are not congruent with your actual expectations, if your expectations are not actually aligned with different rules and regulations, you may not feel satisfaction. If the students, they feel that they are being, underwhelmed, they do not feel satisfied with different rules and regulations used by ComSat, so they may not be. It is called the issue of script congruency. They feel that they are not being, played well, they are not being satisfied well, so they are not being provided well. So this actually is the philosophy of the script perspective. So that was it, guys. Just go through the chapter and try to, think about all the questions that I just imposed and that I just asked, and just figure it out on your own. Try to come up with different arguments, try to come up with different answers, write them down. And if you have any question, you can ask me in the class, and then we are going to discuss these questions in the class as well. So take care. Allah Hafiz.